Freshwater environments and how we classify them and how um, they're different, how they're the same. So scientists classify freshwater environments by how the water moves. Either it's fast moving in rivers, creeks, and the like, or we're looking more at lakes and ponds, marshes, and wetlands where the water is slow moving or not moving at all. So when it comes to the variety and productivity of the organisms found in these freshwater environments, it entirely depends on several factors that we're going to take a look at shortly. So first and foremost is how deep can the sunlight reach, right? If the sunlight can reach all the way to the bottom, you're going to have different organisms living than, for example, the Red River, where sunlight reaches a few inches at best. Uh, the nutrient content of the water, right? Is the water good for life? Is it nutrient depleted? Is it heavy in phosphorus and we get algae blooms and all that fun stuff, right? How deep is the water? How fast is the water moving? How much oxygen is in the water? Some organisms need very specific conditions, and others, like sticklebacks or catfish, can adapt to many different environments. Right? Fish like trout like a very oxygen-rich, cool water environment, which is why you don't find them in the Red River at all. Um, things like catfish, they like living on the bottom. Um, they'll eat anything. They can survive some pretty nasty stuff, so they're well suited for the Red River. Life in the lakes and ponds is often found near the shallows, near the shore, where there's a plethora of nutrients for the plants and animals. Um, Plankton can live in the deeper sunlit water, right? Phytoplankton, the plant plankton, requires sunlight for photosynthesis, so it can't live too deep. Um, Zooplankton, they're the tiny animal plankton. They eat other plankton for food, so they're not going to be too far away from the phytoplankton. Uh, in freshwater environments and in saltwater as well, but our focus is on fresh. In freshwater environments, plankton tend to be the beginning of many, many, many of the food chains that we see in freshwater environments. Lakes and ponds store runoff as part of the water cycle. They provide habitats for plants and animals, and they allow rooted plants to grow and filter water through natural processes. So lakes and ponds are very important in the grand scheme of things. Right, wetlands, they're found alongside other bodies of water. A lot of the areas around Lake Winnipeg, Lake Manitoba, we see a lot of wetlands. Um, right, low-lying areas that tend to be marshes, kind of swampy areas. A quarter of all the world's wetlands are in Canada, especially in the northern regions. Many wetlands have been destroyed because it was thought that they only harbored pests like mosquitoes, which caused all sorts of nasty diseases. Um, but now we know better. Wetlands are actually very important. They do a really good job. The vegetation that grows there does a really good job of removing pollutants from the water. They also act as reservoirs to hold a lot of water to prevent flooding. Uh, there's many different varieties of fish and animals that live in the wetlands. The thick vegetation helps stabilize surrounding soils so we don't have soils eroding and all of that. And many endangered species live at least part of their lives in these wetlands. Um, so the wetlands are very important. That's why a lot of these areas are protected. When we look at river streams and estuaries, um, so these are more your moving waters. Uh, we also see a plethora of plants and animals living here. What can live there depends on the temperature of the water, the speed the water is moving, and the turbidity of the water. Right, I was talking about the trout earlier, how they like cold, oxygenated water, which generally is also fast-moving water. Um, Turbidity, right? How much particulate matters floating around, right? The Red River is very turbid, very a lot of material suspended in the water. So that limits or that affects what can live there. Um, Changes in the variety or productivity of species in these ways can reveal potential problems. Um, right? So if you have a really good trout river and suddenly all the trout are dying, that could tell you there's a problem with the amount of oxygen in the water or other toxins in the water or things like that. Uh, Estuaries are kind of the uh, meeting between fresh and salt water. They're nutrient rich, brackish water. So it's not quite salt water, it's not quite fresh water, it's somewhere in between. In BC, 80% of all coastal wildlife use estuaries, and that's packed into about 3% of the total coastal area. So these areas are vital for wildlife, um, and as such, should be careful with developing these areas or filling in these areas or getting rid of these wetland areas.